Today, we have to ask a big question. Is it possible to get a pro-sounding guitar instrumental recording for less than 10 Benjamins or whatever 10 of the 100 euro is? Well, today we're going to take a look at that, and I'll see if I can make it happen. And welcome to Music with Marky. Before we get into this, I'm going to make two suppositions here. One is that you already have a guitar that you like to play and sounds pretty good, and that you already have a computer that you can use to do the recordings on. I'm assuming the vast majority of the people watching this video on YouTube will already have those two things. If you don't, well, there's no way we're going to get in for a budget under $1,000. So the question is, what is it going to take to get something that sounds like a real finished, pro polished recording, the kind of thing you'd be proud to put up on Spotify and share with your friends, and takes you past that sound of just like kind of a bedroom or garage demo? And the first couple pieces we're going to need to talk about here to get there is hardware, and that is the sound going into the computer and the sound coming out of the computer. So what are you using to plug the guitar into, or whatever instruments you'd be plugging into the computer and getting the sound in and recording it, and what are you listening back and mixing on? Now, obviously behind me here on the studio desk, I have a lot more than $1,000 worth of hardware here because I've been working and doing studio work for clients for a very long time. But what we're going to do for the purposes of this video is just use small pieces of the equipment here, and very specifically, and keep everything under the budget that we're talking about. And the first piece of equipment is this Focusrite here. I've got a 2i4, a Scarlett 2i4. The reason I have a 2i4 actually is because I inherited it from another studio, but you can just as easily use a 2i2. The only difference is the 4 has 4 outputs and the 2 has 2 outputs. Functionally, they're the same. They sound the same. The entire Focusrite series has a wonderful sound and is consistent from top to bottom. So for the purposes of this experiment in this video, trying to do things under $1,000, we're going to talk about a 2i2, and you can pick one of those up for only $159. Now, the next piece of hardware is, what do we listen back on? Now, obviously, expensive studio monitors like the ones I have here are fantastic for mixing. You're looking for a very flat response. But as soon as you get into the world of monitors and getting anything decent, we're going to blow through this budget like it's nothing. And so what I've done, and what I'm going to mix this entire project on, and often I mix on at night, is a pair of headphones that I'll show here. These are the Ultrasone Pro 580 headphones. They do a fantastic job of mixing. I find that if I get a mix that's good in those headphones, it sounds pretty much the same everywhere I go. It does a job nearly as good as a very expensive set of monitors. And for a pair of these, we're looking at adding $109 to our budget. Okay, and now that we've got the hardware and we know how we're getting the sound into the computer and how we're listening back and mixing, let's talk about what it is that we're actually recording on. How are we going to take all of this stuff and smash it into some bits and bytes and put it on the computer? Well, that's called DAW, Digital Audio Workstation, and there are many options out there, and quite frankly, it's mostly about workflow, which one you like or not. They've all got tons of features. There's not that there's one sonically better than another. The sound going into your computer is the sound going into your computer and coming out. A DAW doesn't really change that. And so we're going to look at a very, very popular DAW that I think is packed with features and does everything any of the really expensive big studio DAWs does, and that is Reaper, which does it all for just $60. And there are a ton of great tutorial videos out there that teach you how to use it. And I'm going to run a link below here of a series of videos, the beginning of the series, that teaches you how to use Reaper. It's what I used, and the guy does a fantastic job getting you started, even if you've never used a DAW at all before. Next up, we're going to need a drummer for the style of music we're doing in our demo experiment here. Drums are definitely required, and well, we don't have a real drummer available, and I don't know if I can put a price on what that's about. So what we're going to do is go with a piece of software called Easy Drummer. Easy Drummer is, as the name would imply, extremely easy to use, and we're going to look at it in detail when we go into the studio part of this. And there are many libraries available that are played by real humans and just converted to MIDI, so they don't sound really mechanical. They do have that human feel to them. And there are a lot of different drum kits available. For the purposes of our example, we're just going to buy the basic Easy Drummer and use the libraries that come with it, and we're talking about a price of $179. Next thing up here, because we're talking about guitar instrumental music, and this is a guitar channel, is how are we making the guitar sounds and getting them into the computer. And how are we going to stay in budget here? Now, I've got some expensive hardware speaker emulation and amp emulation equipment here. You could buy an amp that has speaker emulation in it, but we're going to run up against the budget real fast. So I think what we want to look at here is a software option for how we can get some diversity of sounds and good quality sound. And luckily, in the last year or so, I'm recording this in 2020, a bunch of the companies out there that do software emulation of amps and speaker cabinets have just been putting out some really top quality and great sounding product. The one we're going to go with for this demo here is STL ToneHub. I like it because of the wide range of extra sounds and libraries that are available to it that you can add in later if you want. But again, we're just going to go with the basics and what comes with it. And that's going to set us back $149.99. And lastly, we have to talk about two things that are subtle and probably the least known to anybody who's been learning how to record, but are the most important steps in taking what you're doing from homespun demo to a pro sounding recording. The first of these is a channel strip plugin, and I have a whole video on that I'll include above. So I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of how to use it and whatnot, but I do want to mention that it's a very big part of the project here and the sound that we're going to get. And this is Wave's SSL Bundle, and this is going to run us $99. And the last piece of software is mastering software. We're going to put in the master bus so that when we finally do our final mix, we get a sound that is at a good loudness level, so it sounds not too quiet when compared to other stuff that you're going to hear that's professionally done, and that it pulls all the signals together and blends them in such a way that it's very pleasant to the ear, and it takes care of any weird signal spikes and EQing problems, and just sounds good. Car speakers, home speakers, computer speakers, your phone, whatever you're listening to it on, it's got to be mastered well. And the software that we're using is provided by Lurssen, and the cost right now is $49 or $49.99. So let's pop over into the studio so you can see how all this stuff sounds together and how it works on an actual demo song, and you can hear for yourself whether you think it sounds pro or lame bedroom. Okay, so you can see here that I have an instance of Reaper loaded, and I've got all my tracks recorded already, and I'm wearing the cans that I said I'd be mixing on. And the first thing I want to look at here is the drum track itself, and this is Easy Drummer. So if I pull up an instance of Easy Drummer here, you can see that I've got what's called the Modern Vintage Kit. Was one of the things that comes with the software package. You can hear it here. It's good quality drum recording. I'm using all of the, you could see I have a ton of different libraries in here. I've gotten so many of them because I use this so extensively, but we're just using the one that comes with it, Modern Vintage. I dragged over the count in, which you have intros and count-ins built right in. And then I just went to the songs, and to make this simple and quick, I dragged in a verse beat that was 8 measures and a chorus beat that's 8 measures right from the library they provide. And I do stuff like at the last measure of a part, I use one of the fills from the fill library that matches with it. I listen through the ones that I like, and I put together an entire drum track here. Now let's listen a little bit just to the drums by themselves. See, it's good quality drum sounds, better than you're ever going to get with a bunch of mics in a room by yourself, unless you have trained extensively on how to record drums. And the drum sounds are so good that we have gone so far with my Band Dancer Infinity. We've got an electronic drum kit upstairs in the larger studio room, and we send everything in as MIDI, and then we edit it with either Easy Drummer, or the drummer likes to use Superior Drummer. It has some more options for granular editing of drums, but this is how we generate all our sounds, because you get $1 million studio sounds out of $150 software. So that's how I laid the drums in. And for this example, on a tune, I would usually use a bass guitar and play along with this type of stuff. This is kind of a dad rock kind of sounding tune that I did here. And but I didn't talk about having a bass. I'm talking about doing this stuff on a budget. If you have a guitar and a computer, I said you could do it. So I downloaded a free plugin. I'll put a screenshot up here. And I used one of their bass patches here called Deep End. And I wanted to adjust the sound a little bit. You can see I have some other plugins here. I've got a saturation plugin. This is also available for free. I'll include a shot here so you can see it. and I EQ'd a little bit to notch out the highs and a whole lot of one area of the mids because of the sound it was making, the low mids there, you can see. And this EQ is included with Reaper. And then of course I have the channel plugin. Over here you see I'm using one of the presets that comes with the channel plugin. This is the Darlington, Dave Darlington's bass. I used the EDM punchy bass setting here. I went through a bunch of them until I found what I liked. Usually I just use the one that says bass with a bass guitar, but being that it's a keyboard kind of bass, I needed to mess with it a little bit to get the sound I wanted. So now if we listen to just the bass and the drums for a bit. Then when it gets here to the heavier part, very electronic sounding by itself, but it works good in context to the tune. Now we get into the guitars here, and we're talking about STL ToneHub, and I've got a main clean guitar here, and these are the presets that come with the basic version that I talked about buying and gave you the price of. And I pulled up one of the presets that's on this track here. I do have another compressor that comes with Reaper, and you can see it's a multi-band. I'm decreasing some of the mids because the guitar was punching through a little bit and sounding odd. And again, I have the SSL channel, as you can see on every one of these. And in my video about the SSL channels, I talk about why that is so important. So I'm not going to, again, get into that here and turn them off and turn them on. You're going to want to check out that video to see the difference when you use them. So that guitar, let's solo that guitar by itself. I've got it split a little bit to the left. And I've got two other guitars, it's really one guitar played and then split stereo and separate stereo tracks here as a harmony to it, just to give it some life. And if you hear them in context of the mix, it's got a little bit of a clipped, distorted kind of sound, but I liked it for the purposes here. And then I switched to a heavier guitar here, in which, again, I'm using ToneHub tones, stock that came with the default, the basic set. And I played the guitar twice, once on the left side, once on the right. Again, I'll isolate. Okay, all this stuff on the cheap. And now here I have a part that comes in with a lead, and it's got the clean guitars, goes back to the A part. And you see I have 3 tracks for the lead. There's a little trick I'm using here because, again, we're staying under the budget. And within the budget, I don't have a delay with stereo Pong. There's not a stereo Pong delay in the basic STL ToneHub tones that I was using. So I created a Pong by taking the main track, duplicating it, and putting one left and one right. And then I have a delay on the left side, and you can see it's 2/8 notes. If you look at the length over here, let me pull that up where you can see it. Right here, length, 2/8 notes. And then I have the other one pulled up to a length of 2.5. So they're slightly offset in the delay, and I've created a Pong delay out of a mono delay. And you hear that just by itself. Real lush delay. And finally, when we get to the end of the song, I've got my final STL ToneHub tone here. Didn't do anything with any Pong delay on this. It's a basic tone with a mono delay that came with it and some reverb. And that one by itself, briefly. Ooh, a little sloppy there. And then the last thing we mentioned is the mastering plugin. Over here, this is what it looks like. You can see the settings I'm using. These are pretty much standard out of the box. And you play the tune without the mastering plugin, and it's going to be a lot quieter and not melded together as well. I'll just jump in over here. And I put it in. Instant mastering. So there it all is inside the box, inside Reaper. You can see what I'm using. How about I roll the tune now? I'll play along and show you what I did. you have it. There's how it all works. There's how it all sounds. You've heard stuff turned on, turned off. You get an idea of what I'm using here. And we've got what I think is a sound that I would be happy to release on Spotify. And it's the same equipment that I use for the stuff that I release on my Spotify channel. Shameless plug here. Although I'm using, more plugins and different hardware to get my guitar sounds, this is right up to the quality of anything that I would release. So as always, guys, if you have any questions or comments, anything you want to add additionally as to what we've done here, please leave that in the comments below. I'm always happy to answer as soon as I can. And until next time, keep making great music for under $1,000. Hey friends, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. It makes the whole world better.